It was 3 in the morning when someone started pounding on my door. The sound jolted me out of sleep, my heart racing. At first, I thought maybe it was a drunk neighbor or some emergency, but when I looked through the peephole, it was my landlord, Mr. Dalton. His face looked pale and wet with sweat. He said, "Pack everything. You need to leave. Right now. 10 minutes." Still half asleep, I just stood there staring at him. Leave? Why? What happened? His eyes darted down the hallway before meeting mine again. His voice shook as he whispered, "The previous tenant just came back." I frowned. "What do you mean came back?" He took a step closer, his voice barely audible now. "She died here last year." That was the moment I realized something was terribly wrong with my apartment. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more true story-style mysteries and comment below where you're watching from. I want to know who's brave enough to keep listening. My name is Jenna Rowe, and this story happened last fall when I moved into my first apartment alone. I had just left a long relationship that drained everything out of me. My savings, my confidence, and most of all, my peace. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere quiet where no one knew my name. I found the listing online for a 1-bedroom apartment in a small building outside Richmond, Virginia. It wasn't perfect, but it was affordable and came fully furnished. The kind of place you move into when you're trying to rebuild your life from scratch. The building was old but well kept. The hallways smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, and the floors creaked with every step. My landlord, Mr. Dalton, was in his 60s, polite, soft-spoken, the kind of man who always wore a cardigan no matter the weather. He helped me carry my boxes upstairs and told me he lived on the first floor if I ever needed anything. Across the hall was Mrs. Lockhart, an older woman with a sharp tongue but a kind heart. She'd lean on her doorframe whenever she saw me and say things like, "You're too young to live alone in a place like this, dear." I thought she was just being dramatic. The first week went smoothly. I unpacked, decorated the walls with my drawings, and started to feel like I was finally settling in. I worked from home as an illustrator, so I spent long hours in that apartment sketching by the window and drinking too much coffee. The street outside was quiet, and the neighbors mostly kept to themselves. It felt like peace, something I hadn't felt in a long time. My younger sister, Ava, came by one weekend to visit. She was 23, full of energy and sarcasm. "You've got a nice place," she said, tossing her jacket on the couch. "Kind of old, though. You sure it's not haunted?" I laughed. "If it is, at least the ghost pays rent." She rolled her eyes, but later that night, as we watched a movie, we heard a faint tapping sound from the kitchen. I brushed it off, thinking it was the pipes or maybe a mouse. Old buildings always had noises, right? That night, I went to bed feeling proud of myself. I was on my own, stable, and finally rebuilding the life I'd lost. The apartment was quiet, except for the occasional creak from the radiator and the wind outside. I remember thinking that the place almost felt too quiet. A few days later, I started noticing little things. The smell of lavender that came and went without warning. The soft sound of humming that seemed to drift through the walls at night. I thought it was Mrs. Lockhart or someone down the hall, but it never seemed to stop at a specific time. One morning, I found a coffee cup on the counter that I didn't remember using. It had lipstick on the rim, not my shade, not my brand. I stood there for a long time staring at it, convincing myself I must have been tired and forgot. By the second week, I'd grown used to the odd sounds and smells. They blended into my routine, but the night Mr. Dalton knocked at my door, all that calm vanished. It wasn't a casual knock or even a polite one. It was urgent, terrified, like a man who knew something I didn't. And when he told me to pack everything and leave, I realized that whatever had been happening in my apartment wasn't just my imagination. It was something real, something that didn't want me there. The night my landlord knocked was the moment everything I thought I knew about that apartment started to fall apart. I didn't leave right away. I was too stunned, standing in the middle of my living room with my phone in my hand, trying to make sense of what he'd just said. The previous tenant came back. Those words played in my head over and over. How could someone who died just show up again? After he left, I tried to calm myself down. I told myself maybe he was confused. Maybe someone broke in, or maybe he'd mixed me up with another tenant. I stayed up the rest of the night, too afraid to sleep, listening to every sound that came through the walls. The building was old, so noises were normal, pipes clicking, floorboards settling. But that night, everything sounded sharper. Every creak made me flinch. The next morning, I called my sister, Ava. "You won't believe what happened last night," I said, my voice shaking. When I told her about Mr. Dalton's warning, she laughed nervously. "That's insane. He's probably losing it. Old people get paranoid sometimes." "Yeah," I said, trying to believe her. "You're probably right." But deep down, I knew something was off. I decided to ask Mrs. Lockhart if she knew anything. She opened her door before I even knocked, like she had been expecting me. "You're the new girl in 3B, she said, narrowing her eyes. I told him not to rent that one again. I felt a chill. "Why not?" She sighed and looked down the hall before whispering. "A girl died there last year. Young, about your age, fell from the balcony. The police said suicide, but nobody believed it. The night she died, I heard screaming. Not hers. A man's." My throat tightened. "Do you know her name?" "Rachel," she said softly. "Rachel Monroe." I thanked her and went back to my apartment, trying not to panic. The air felt heavier when I walked in, like the room itself was listening. I searched Rachel Monroe online, and sure enough, there was a short article from a year ago. "Local woman found dead in apartment balcony fall. Authorities suspect self-harm. No mention of foul play. No updates since." That night, strange things began happening again. While I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom light flickered. I turned it off and back on. Nothing unusual. But when I looked up at the mirror, there was a faint handprint on the glass. It wasn't mine. I grabbed a towel and wiped it away, but the mark stayed. I stepped back, my stomach twisting. The apartment suddenly felt freezing, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. I left every light on and sat in the living room until sunrise. The next day, Ava called again. "I can come stay with you tonight if you want," she said. I hesitated. "No, I'll be fine. I just think this place is getting to me." But I wasn't fine. That evening, I was working on a drawing when I heard soft humming coming from the kitchen. It was faint, almost like someone was standing in the corner of the room. The tune was slow and sad, and I froze. I turned my head, expecting to see my phone playing music or the TV on, but there was nothing. The humming stopped, replaced by a quiet sound of dripping water. I followed it to the sink, but the faucet wasn't leaking. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something move, a shadow. It passed from the hallway to the bedroom in complete silence. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to follow it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I reached the bedroom, the door was slightly open, swinging gently as if someone had just walked through. I pushed it open and felt a rush of cold air. The curtains by the balcony were moving, even though the doors were locked. Then I noticed something new. On the wall beside the window, there were faint scratches, as if someone had dragged their fingernails across the paint. I leaned closer and saw words carved into the surface. Not deep, but enough to read under the light. "He comes back." My knees went weak. I backed away and grabbed my phone to call Mr. Dalton. He answered on the second ring, his voice tired and shaky. "You shouldn't still be there," he said. "Who is he?" I demanded. "What's going on with this apartment?" He sighed heavily. "You need to get out before tonight. Please. I'll explain tomorrow. Just go stay somewhere else." "I'm not leaving until you tell me what's happening," I said. There was a long silence on the line. Then he whispered, "Rachel didn't kill herself. She was being stalked by a man, her ex-boyfriend. He used to sneak into the building at night. After she died, people said they still saw him walking the halls, and sometimes they saw her too." I hung up before he finished. I couldn't take hearing more. I just sat there, gripping my phone, shaking. That night, I packed a small bag and decided to sleep at Ava's place. But as I went to grab my keys, something caught my eye. The bathroom mirror. The glass was fogged up, even though the shower hadn't been used. And written in the steam were 3 words that froze me in place. "Don't let him." The message faded as I stared at it, leaving nothing but my reflection. My hands were trembling. I didn't know who had written it, or what it meant, but I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. That was the night I realized whatever haunted this apartment wasn't just a story or superstition. It was a warning, and I was running out of time to figure out what it was trying to tell me. After the message appeared on the mirror, I couldn't breathe. My whole body felt frozen, like fear had seeped into my bones. I stood in that small bathroom, staring at the fading words, "Don't let him." The steam slowly disappeared, and I was left with only my reflection, pale and shaking. I didn't know who he was or what I was supposed to do, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep pretending this was nothing. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Dalton again, but he didn't answer. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling. "Mr. Dalton, please, I need to know what's happening here. What does that message mean? Who is he?" No response. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the phone. Then I made a decision. I wasn't leaving until I found out the truth. Whatever was happening in that apartment wasn't going to end with me running away. I wanted answers, and I was going to get them. The next morning, I went down to Mr. Dalton's office. He looked surprised to see me, like he didn't expect me to still be around. "I told you to leave," he said, rubbing his forehead. "You said you'd explain everything," I replied. "So start explaining." He hesitated before motioning me to sit. "The girl who lived there before you, Rachel Monroe, was a good tenant, quiet, polite. She lived there for 3 years. Then, last summer, everything changed. She started calling me at night, saying someone was trying to get into her apartment. I changed her locks twice. She swore she heard footsteps in the hallway and the sound of keys in her door. The police said she was just paranoid. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Did they ever catch anyone? He shook his head. No one believed her. And then one night, she fell from the balcony. The official report said suicide, but Mrs. Lockhart heard arguing before it happened. A man's voice. I swallowed hard. Her ex-boyfriend? Yes, he said quietly. He used to work here. Maintenance staff. He disappeared the same week she died. Nobody's seen him since. I leaned forward. But what about last night? You said someone saw her come back. His hands trembled as he spoke. A tenant downstairs swore they saw Rachel standing in the hallway outside your door. Same clothes she wore the night she died. Same bruises. I didn't believe it. Not until the security cameras caught movement in the hallway around 2:50 a.m. I checked the footage myself. What did you see? I asked, barely above a whisper. He stared at the floor. A shadow. The shape of a woman standing outside your apartment. But when I rewound the video, she was gone. I didn't know what to say. My stomach felt heavy, my hands cold. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But I also couldn't ignore what I'd seen and heard in that apartment. I went back upstairs, determined to look for something, anything, that could explain what was happening. I started searching through every corner of the place. Behind the refrigerator, inside the closets, under the bed. The air felt thick and heavy, almost like the room didn't want me there. In the bedroom, I noticed one of the floorboards was slightly lifted. I pried it open with a screwdriver and found a small wooden box covered in dust. My heart raced as I lifted the lid. Inside were a few old items, a cracked phone, a locket, and a notebook. The name Rachel was written on the first page in neat handwriting. I sat on the floor and started reading. Most of the pages were diary entries, normal things at first, about her job, her friends, and her love life, but the last few entries were different. The handwriting became messy, rushed. He won't leave me alone. I hear him in the walls. Mr. Dalton says it's in my head, but I know what I saw. And finally, if something happens to me, it won't be an accident. He said he'd come back for me. I dropped the notebook, my hands shaking. The room suddenly felt colder, the air still. I looked toward the balcony, and for a second I swore I saw a reflection, the faint outline of a woman standing there. But when I blinked, it was gone. That was when I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I called Ava and told her everything. She didn't laugh this time. "You need to get out of there, Jenna," she said. "You're not safe. I'm not leaving until I figure out what really happened to her," I said. "Someone needs to finish what she started." Ava sighed. "Then I'm coming over. You're not doing this alone. By the time she arrived that evening, the sun was setting, and the apartment looked darker than usual. We sat together on the couch, the wooden box open between us. Ava picked up the locket, turning it in her hand. Inside was a photo of Rachel, young, smiling, full of life. She looks like you, Ava said quietly. I frowned. What do you mean? She really does. Same hair, same eyes. That's creepy. I hadn't noticed it before, but she was right. I looked almost exactly like Rachel. Suddenly, the noise of keys jingling outside the door made both of us jump. We froze. Then came the sound of the handle turning, slowly, deliberately. Ava whispered, "Is that Mr. Dalton?" I shook my head, my voice barely audible. He doesn't have a reason to come up here. The handle turned again. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. Whoever was outside wasn't knocking. They were trying to get in. That was the moment I realized what Rachel's message meant. Don't let him. The person outside wasn't the landlord. It was the man Rachel had been afraid of, and somehow he had come back. The sound of the door handle twisting sent a shock through my body. Ava and I stared at each other, frozen. The old metal rattled softly, then stopped. For a few seconds, everything was quiet again, so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I took one careful step toward the door, motioning for Ava to stay behind me. She whispered, "Jenna, don't." But I couldn't just stand there. I leaned closer, trying to listen. Then the handle turned again, slow, deliberate, like whoever was outside was testing it, waiting for a reaction. I stepped back, my stomach twisting with dread. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to sound brave, but my voice shook. There was no answer, only the soft scrape of shoes moving across the hallway floor. Ava grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "We need to call the police," she whispered. I nodded, fumbling for my phone. But before I could dial, a loud thud hit the door, then another. Someone was pounding on it with both hands now, trying to force it open. Ava screamed and pulled me toward the kitchen. I could hear wood splintering, the lock starting to give. I ran to the counter and grabbed a knife, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The pounding stopped suddenly, replaced by a single, quiet knock, the same calm, rhythmic knock I'd heard on the security footage Mr. Dalton had described. A voice followed, deep, low, familiar. "Rachel, I just want to talk." My blood ran cold. He thought I was her. Ava whispered, "He thinks you're the woman who died." I didn't move, didn't breathe. The voice on the other side of the door spoke again, this time sharper. "You can't hide from me forever." The air felt heavier with each word, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. I took Ava's hand and whispered, "We're getting out the back." The balcony was the only other exit, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't a good idea. That was where Rachel had died. Still, it was our only choice. I pulled Ava toward the sliding door, unlocking it carefully so the sound wouldn't carry. The cool night air rushed in, and for a moment, I felt relief, until I noticed something strange. The balcony railing had deep dents and scratches, like someone had clung to it before falling. Behind us, the door finally gave way with a sharp crack. We turned just in time to see a man step inside. He was tall, with messy hair, dark clothes, and eyes that looked hollow, almost lifeless. There was a scar across his jaw, and in his right hand, he held a small crowbar. "Rachel," he said again, smiling faintly, "you can't keep running from me." Ava gasped, and I whispered, "He's not supposed to be here. He's not supposed to be alive." He looked around the apartment like he recognized every corner, his gaze moving over the furniture, the walls, the pictures I had hung. Then his eyes landed on the wooden box still sitting open on the table. "You found it," he said quietly. "She tried to hide it from me." He stepped closer, and Ava moved in front of me, shaking but defiant. "You need to leave," she said. "We called the police." He laughed, a dry, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "No one's coming. They never came for her, did they?" He took another step. "You shouldn't have moved in here." I gripped the knife tighter, my hands slick with sweat. My mind raced, trying to think of anything that could stop him. Then, something strange happened. The air in the room shifted. The curtains by the balcony began to move, though there was no wind. The faint scent of lavender filled the air, the same scent that had haunted me for weeks. The man stopped, frowning. "What is that smell?" Ava looked at me, terrified. "Jenna." The lights flickered, and for a moment, everything went dark. When they came back on, there was a faint reflection in the balcony door, a woman's outline, pale, still, watching us. "Rachel." The man's face went white. "No," he whispered, stepping back. "You're not real. You're gone." But the reflection didn't move like a trick of the light. It turned its head toward him, and though I couldn't hear words, the message was clear. "You can't hurt anyone else." The crowbar dropped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He stumbled backward, shaking his head. "I didn't mean to," he said weakly. "It was an accident." The lights flickered again, brighter this time, and the air turned cold enough to sting my skin. Then came a sound, a whisper carried through the apartment, so soft it was almost like a breath. "Don't let him." Before I could react, the man bolted toward the door, running down the hall. I heard the echo of his footsteps fade away until there was silence again. Ava collapsed on the couch, breathing hard. "Did you see that?" she asked. "Did you see her?" I nodded slowly, unable to speak. The lavender scent still hung in the air, and the reflection in the balcony door was gone. All that remained was the faint outline of a handprint on the glass, as if she'd pressed her palm there one last time. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They found the man hiding in the alley behind the building, trembling and muttering Rachel's name over and over. It turned out Mr. Dalton had called them earlier after seeing a shadow in the hallway again. When they ran his ID, everything matched. The missing maintenance worker, Rachel's ex-boyfriend, the same man wanted for her death. As they took him away, Mr. Dalton looked at me with guilt in his eyes. "She saved you," he said quietly, just like she tried to save herself. I looked back at the apartment door, its frame cracked and splintered, and felt tears well up. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else, a strange sense of peace. Rachel hadn't come back to haunt anyone. She came back to stop him. When I finally left that apartment for good, I turned one last time to look at the balcony. The morning light hit the glass just right, and for a second, I could have sworn I saw her standing there, smiling faintly, free at last. The morning after everything happened, the building felt completely different. The air was still, the halls were silent, and for the first time since I'd moved in, there was no sense of someone watching me. Sunlight spilled through the cracked blinds as officers finished their inspection, taking photos, asking questions, and marking the floor where the door had been forced open. The smell of lavender was gone. What lingered instead was that sterile, bitter scent of cleaning supplies the police always bring with them. Ava sat beside me on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. We hadn't slept all night. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the man's face, the way his expression changed from anger to terror when he saw her reflection in the balcony door. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of her. Rachel had been there, somehow, protecting us. The police told us the man confessed everything. He admitted he'd broken into the building using an old set of maintenance keys he'd kept after getting fired. He had been living in abandoned apartments nearby, watching, waiting. He came back to that place over and over, like he was haunted by his own guilt. He claimed he thought Rachel was still alive, that he could fix things if he found her. When they asked about the night she died, he said it was an accident, that he didn't mean to push her, but his story didn't change what he'd done. Mr. Dalton sat across from me, holding his head in his hands. "I should have told you the truth before renting it out," he said. His voice was rough with guilt. "I thought enough time had passed. I didn't want to scare anyone away. I never imagined he'd come back. I didn't know what to say. I didn't blame him. Not really. I could see how much the guilt was eating at him. He had lost tenants, reputation, and peace of mind. Still, part of me wished he had been honest from the start. Maybe things would have been different." When the police left, Ava packed a few of my things while I sat by the window. The sky outside was turning from gray to gold, and the light hit the balcony railing just right, catching the scratches along the metal where Rachel must have fought to hold on. I ran my fingers over the marks. It felt strange, knowing I'd been sleeping just a few feet from where someone had taken her last breath. That afternoon, Ava drove me to her apartment. I didn't even look back at the building. I didn't want to. But later that night, when the silence settled around me, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The smell of lavender, the reflection in the balcony door, and the message on the mirror. Don't let him. She had tried to save me. Even in death, she hadn't given up trying to stop him. For the next few days, I stayed with Ava. She refused to let me be alone, though sometimes I'd catch her glancing toward the windows at night, like she was half expecting to see someone standing outside. I tried to focus on work again, but drawing felt strange now. My hands wouldn't stay steady. My thoughts kept drifting back to the apartment. A week later, Mr. Dalton called. "They're demolishing the building," he said. "After everything, the owner doesn't want to keep it open. I thought you should know." For a moment, I didn't say anything. Then I asked, "What about Rachel's things? Her box? They gave it to the police," he said. "Evidence, I guess. But there was something else. When they cleared out your unit, the mirror in the bathroom had a message on it again." My breath caught. What did it say? He hesitated. Just 2 words. "It's over." I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. I wasn't sure if I believed in ghosts before, but I did now. Not the kind that haunt to hurt, but the kind that stay because they can't rest until something is finished. Rachel wasn't vengeful. She was brave. She didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. And in her own way, she finally got it. A month later, I moved into a new apartment on the other side of the city. It was smaller, but brighter. The walls were freshly painted. The air smelled like new carpet and sunlight. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night without waking up in fear. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, I found something tucked inside my sketchbook, a small silver locket. I froze when I realized what it was. Rachel's locket, the one from the box under the floorboards. I didn't remember packing it. Maybe Ava did by accident. Maybe it wasn't an accident at all. I opened it, half expecting to see the same photo of Rachel, but inside was something different. A folded piece of paper, small and worn. I opened it carefully. In faint, faded handwriting, it said, "Thank you for not letting him." I sat there on the floor, holding that note, tears filling my eyes. Somehow, in the chaos of everything, Rachel had found her way to me one last time to say goodbye. That night, I walked out onto my new balcony. The air was cool, the city lights glowing below, calm and alive. I whispered quietly into the night, "You can rest now." The wind brushed past me, soft and steady, almost like a sigh of relief. I knew then that she was gone, not in sadness, but in peace. What happened in that apartment will stay with me forever. It taught me that sometimes the past doesn't stay buried until the truth is faced. It also reminded me that not every haunting is meant to scare you. Some are meant to protect you. So if you're hearing my story right now, remember this. Pay attention to the things you feel, but can't explain. Sometimes the warnings we get aren't meant to frighten us, but to save us. If you enjoyed this story and want more real, emotional storytelling, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive, stories that remind us that even in darkness, there's always a reason to listen closely.